They tell you that life is a book, but for most of us, it's a pre-written play. And I was a Shakespearean-level actor. At 22, I wasn't looking for a soulmate. I was looking for a scoreboard. In college, dating was a blood sport. It was a competition between me and my buddies, who could land the prettiest one. I wasn't thinking about the conversations we'd have at 3 a.m. or the way our souls would mesh. I was thinking about the way she looked on my arm when we walked into a party. I won. I got the girl. I got the marriage. I got the children. I followed the script so perfectly that I even convinced myself I was the lead writer. The early years of my marriage were, honestly, great. The sex was good, the vibe was golden retriever energy, and the world patted me on the back every single day for being a successful man. But here's the thing about scripts. Eventually, the play ends and the lights come up. And when the house lights came up on my marriage, I looked at the woman across from me and realized I didn't know her. Worse, I didn't know the man sitting next to her. I didn't divorce her because I hated her. I divorced her because I was starving. Not for food, but for the truth. So, there I was, 60 years old, newly out, and stepping into the gay market. I thought it would be a celebratory parade. I thought I'd finally find that deep, soul-crushing love I'd seen in the movies. Baby, I was so wrong. Instead, I found out that the gay dating scene is less like a romance novel and more like a high-speed stock market where my stock was being traded at historical value only. In the straight world, I was a PhD, a father, a man of stature. In the gay world, I was a daddy. I was a sweetie. I was a bear, which sounds hot until you realize half the time it just means, can you pay for the Uber? I was starving for attention, and to be honest, I still am. But for 40 years, I had been invisible to myself. Now, I wanted to be seen. But I was like a man who hadn't eaten in a month, walking into a buffet. I didn't have a palate. I didn't have standards. I just had hunger. And I was ready to try everything that was available. And you know what the worst part is? The more you eat, you are supposed to feel full. In the gay world, the more you do, the more you want and need. And man, this is upsetting to say. But if a man looked at me for more than 3 seconds, I didn't just see a date. I saw a destiny. I fell in love with a speed that was frankly embarrassing. It only took a tiny drop of attention for me to build a whole future in my head. I was the fastest heart in the West. But hey, I was not that fast in bed, just saying. And let me tell you something deeply humiliating. I became one of those men, the checking your phone every 4 minutes men, the reading old text messages like ancient scripture men. At one point, a guy sent me, "Good morning, handsome." And I stared at that message so long, you would have thought the man had sent me the cure for loneliness itself. Meanwhile, he was probably sending the exact same message to 6 other men while sitting on the toilet. One day, I went out to meet my best friend Marco, and Marco pointed something out, something that I would have preferred to ignore for the rest of my life. He said, "Girl, honey, stop. Just stop." I replied, "Stop what?" "Marco is different, Marco. He's a poet." Marco is 55. He lives with 3 roommates, and his poetry is just his grocery list written in lowercase. Then he said, "You aren't in love with him. You're in love with the fact that he has a pulse." And he replied to your text within the same business day. You're falling in love at 90 miles per hour, and you're going to hit a wall. Marco was right, but I didn't want to hear it. I argued with him. I told him he was cynical. I told him that at 60, I didn't have the luxury of playing hard to get. Because here's the terrifying thing nobody tells you about dating later in life. At 25, heartbreak feels temporary. At 60, heartbreak feels mathematical. You start counting years instead of emotions. How many more chances do I realistically have? And that pressure can make a grown man mistake attention for destiny. I told myself my urgency was emotional maturity. I told myself I knew what I wanted, so why wait? But the truth was, I was just terrified. I was terrified that if I slowed down, I'd realize that the men I was chasing weren't actually interested in a serious relationship. They wanted the fun side. They wanted the no-strings gay life. They wanted a hookup, and I was trying to offer them a mortgage. Then I went to Brazil. I went for a vacation. What I never imagined was that in this trip, I was going to find a mirror. See, this is the thing. In the US, I felt like a leftover. In Brazil, I felt like a delicacy. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy with a PhD. I was a man with sazon, experience, stability. The attention wasn't a drop, it was a flood. I was being chosen. Men were looking at me not as a temporary fun time, but as a man they wanted to take. There, I was not walking in a buffet restaurant. I was actually the buffet. And if that do not make your ego bigger than the Eiffel Tower, then what? It was intoxicating. For the first time since my divorce, the starvation stopped. I felt full. I met him. Let's call him Tiago. He was attentive. He was romantic. He wanted to know about my children, my research, my poetry. He didn't check his phone when I talked. But Tiago also had this habit that quietly drove me insane. Every time we passed luxury apartments near the beach, he'd stop and say, "One day, America." Then he'd laugh, but not enough for me to know if he was joking. And suddenly, my romantic fantasy started sharing a bedroom with immigration anxiety. You know, for a fast lover like me, this was the ultimate drug. I was trying to get rid of Marco, remarks, "You fall in love too fast," out of my head. Because with that attention, my legs felt like chocolate bar left inside your car at the Navarre Beach in Florida. But then the sun went down. That night, Tiago left my hotel around 11:30. He kissed me goodbye, smiled, and said, "Boa noite, meu amor." And for the first 15 minutes, I felt like the happiest man in Rio. Then midnight came, and my brain started writing horror movies. By 12:15, I was checking WhatsApp every 30 seconds like a retired FBI agent tracking a cartel suspect. Last seen online. Oh, that feature was created by Satan himself. At 12:40, I convinced myself he had another man, another tourist, another life, and possibly a wife and 2 children hidden somewhere in Sao Paulo. By 1 a.m., I had emotionally collapsed so hard I was sitting shirtless on the edge of my hotel bed, eating minibar peanuts like they were antidepressants. And the worst part? Nothing had actually happened. Tiago simply fell asleep. But my reaction had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with what happens when a starving heart finally tastes attention and becomes terrified of losing it. And that's when the debate started in the back of my mind. The voice that sounded a lot like Marco. Tiago is a hot Brazilian man. He knows how to treat a man like me. And he spent more than several hours in my room. But now the question came, is it me or is it the green card? This is the part we don't talk about in interracial, international gay couples. The elephant in the bedroom is a stack of USCIS paperwork. I wanted to believe Tiago loved my soul, but I also knew I represented a doorway to a different life. In the US, gay men wanted me for no strings. In Brazil, it felt like Tiago wanted to tie every string possible to me. The green card grind is not romantic. It's a job. It's months of legal fees, background checks, and the immense psychological weight of being someone's sponsor. You aren't just a boyfriend anymore. You're a legal guarantor. You're responsible for their health care, their housing, their legal status. But damn, I like him a lot. I could spend the rest of my life with a man like him. But I realized I was still confused. Was I confusing Tiago's desire for a better life with love for me? Or was I confusing my own desire to be the hero with love for him? I have to be honest, my friend. I decided I wasn't going to follow another script. I wasn't going to rush him back to the States and start the paperwork. And yes, this is a bit crazy, but I decided to move to Brazil for 6 months. No vacations, no highlights reels, just life. I needed to see if my mind was right, not just my heart. I needed to see who Tiago was when he was tired. I needed to see who I was when I wasn't the American savior, but just a guy living in a small apartment in a foreign country. This is what is in my head. 6 months is a long time to keep up an act. It's long enough for the honeymoon desire to fade and for the real person to emerge. But it is also a lot of time for me to fall in love and then get hurt. I learned that falling in love is a solo sport. It's something I was doing at people. But loving someone? That's a collaborative project. At 60, I finally understood the title of my own life. I had spent 40 years following a straight script, and then 2 years following a desperate script. In Brazil, I finally put the pen down. I might end up single for whatever time I have left. And you know what? That's okay. Because I'd rather be alone and certain of my worth than in a crowded room, still starving for the wrong kind of attention. I want to stop confusing the desire to be seen with the act of being loved. Because maybe love was never supposed to rescue me from loneliness. Maybe love arrives after the loneliness stops controlling you. And for the first time in my life, I'm not asking, who will choose me? I'm asking, would I abandon myself again just to avoid being alone? At 60, that question matters more than romance. And maybe that's the first honest love story I've ever told myself. I have done a lot of progress, but not quite there yet. So I won't rush the heart. It's waited 60 years. It can wait another 6 months for the truth.